This is the 9th edition of the Tiny Lab Talks. Today we are going to talk about narratives in art. Tiny Lab Talks are brief, informal talks between researchers invited by the University of Aveiro and researchers from the university itself through the American Corner program on topics such as technologies, innovation, research and culture. The discussions will usually take place at the university's American Corner MediaLab with the support of the US Embassy in Portugal. So I want to give a warm welcome to both of our guests today. Cappy Thompson, who's an internationally recognized artist from Seattle and is known for her mythopoetic narratives on glass using grisaille painting technique. José António Cristo has an extensive background in history of art and is the current director of the Museum of Aveiro. And I'm Pedro Bessa. I'm a researcher at the ID Plus Research Institute and one of the directors of the Contemporary Artistic Creation MA program at the University of Aveiro. So to start with the topic of this tiny talk, Cappy, as I understand, your art has a lot to do with content, with these narratives where you explore various cultural, traditional related, spiritual related traditions, your own personal life also, and so on. And this would be even more important for you than the glass technique itself. But how do you start your projects? I mean, do you begin with a basic idea that you already have, like a story or a specific theme you want to illustrate? Or do you sometimes, for instance, begin with the drawing, some doodlings you did, or with a color, or some picture you came across, and then you start from that, you add other pictures, other materials, and you create a sort of storyline from there? How does it work?
Yeah, so I start, sometimes I have a library of mostly secondhand books from, I'm interested in I love work from kind of many cultures, most always pre-Renaissance, so pre-perspective. I like everything from, for example, Indian painting, Persian painting, German folk print, Mexican folk art. I like textile. So decorative arts of all kinds. So I'm interested in the narrative aspect of that work, in a kind of emotional content, and the colorful nature of it. So when I want to start a body of work, sometimes I'll just go to my library and pull down number of books and just rifle through, and it's interesting. I'll be attracted to an image here, an image there, and then I'll just, an idea might spark from it, and then I'll start sketching. And there was a period of my work where I placed myself into a narrative, kind of made an epic story, or jumped into an epic story with myself as a protagonist or as a character in the narrative. So, but in terms of sketching, sometimes I'll start on paper, but if I'm working on a vessel, I actually just sketch directly onto the object, and then it's very loose to begin with, and when the idea starts to gel, then the drawing tightens, and then I can start painting.
Thank you very much indeed. to St. Antonio. The scope of our collections at the Museum of Aveiro, Santa Joana, goes back to the 18th, 19th centuries, and we have news among the collections of this practice on glass painting.
Glass painting, yes, we have. Well, my English is very poor, so I would rather read than talk. Good afternoon to all, and thank you very much for having us on this 9th edition of the Tiny Lab Talks, and for the privilege to meet our fabulous artist, Cappy Thompson, and all the magical artistic universe she offers us. The Museum of Aveiro is installed at the former convent of Jesus of Aveiro, which belonged to the Dominican order and was founded in the middle of the 15th century. It functioned until 1834, when we were extinguished the religious orders, and then became a college for girls until 1910. With the Republic, the building was destined to become a museum of ancient art, gathering not only the surviving goods of the convent, but also artworks from other extinct religious buildings, mainly of Aveiro, but also Lisboa and Coimbra, convents, monasteries, churches, chapels, and so on. Therefore, our collections are above all religious art, the goods that used to belong to Portuguese Catholic Church from the 15th to the 19th centuries, and for this reason we do not have much contemporary items. No painted glass or stained glass, and also no stained glass windows, as could be expected for the late Gothic period. However, there are glasses that we believe to be worth mentioning. The window glasses of the Garrides of the Church of Jesus, from the first half of the 18th century, still in situ, that are extremely rare, as well as some of the glasses that were used to protect devotional images. Glass was a very rare material at the time, and only rich commissioners could afford it. We also have a few glass recipients, such as lamps, jars, and so on, but mainly without decoration. Some of them attributed to the Vistalec factory near Aveiro, which initially produced also glass items, modeled with appliance of cameos, royal figures as in use throughout Europe, around 1824. Meanwhile, in 1968, the museum received a huge donation of Chinese art by Dr. Nascimento Leitão. Amongst sculptures, silverware, porcelains, it also included painted glass with oriental themes, landscapes, interiors, or flowers. No snuff bottles. But what I believe are the most interesting items over glass, plain glass, are the paintings of religious figures, framed and for suspension, that fortunately survived. They are extremely fragile, from the late 18th century and early 19th century. They don't have the three-dimensionality of the work of Cappy, that opens field to a very delicate and impressive intimate work, but they would satisfy the demand for these icons, whose compositions were authorized by the Holy Church. Most of the times based on engravings, as well as for the European continent. These paintings, done on the back of the glass, would need no application of varnishes, because the brightness would come from the glass properties. These themes, we can call them narratives, were above all meant to serve as model or inspiration to the believers through images, because at the time few people knew how to read or how to write. The creative process that Cappy brings us on glass doesn't exist among our collections, but the artist's intelligence picture poems which marry mythology, folk styles, and self-expression, where glass gives her stories a place to live, while walking down her path for beauty. And I would end with the invitation to a visit to the Museum of Aveiro.
Thank you.
Congratulations for your work.
Oh, thank you very much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe now we could have a question from the audience. And does anyone want to intervene? No. Well, if not, in that case, I would have one last question to Cappy. Cappy, some of your imagery is religious related, and nowadays almost everything, almost every picture or statement or cultural practice can become the subject of dispute and disagreement.
Yeah.
Even more so when religion is involved. Sometimes controversy over religious imagery can even erupt into violence. Is this an issue? Is this a worry for you? How do these questions affect your creative process?
Yeah. I have always been interested in, I was raised Episcopalian tradition, Church of England, but as a teenager I rejected religion, and then as a young adult I was attracted to the religion of every culture on the face of the planet. So and then so I got interested in Buddhism and Sufi culture, Sufi stories, Sufi philosophy, and I eventually was also interested in indigenous religions, and then back to Christianity. I have to look. So when I look at religion, I'm very inclusive about it, and I fell in love with all of the Hindu and Vedic imagery, and also the stories. I found myself painting angels from the time I was starting to work with glass, and I have deepened and deepened. So I have a kind of a universal. I mean, I would say I'm a very religious person. And so I've come at it kind of lightly, and so I haven't worried about. I have thought about, how does a Hindu person relate to the work where I have included myself in the Hindu narrative, and so there I am with Lord Krishna or Shiva or Ganesha, and I found people to be very generous and to enjoy the work. I also make my work thinking that other people would picture themselves in the narrative. So if I have a title that says, I imagine us as a holy family, or Lord Krishna grants me a boon. But if you read that chapter, you read Lord Shiva grants me a boon, and so it's you I'm talking to also. So more recently, in the United States now, I grew up in the 60s. I came coming of age in the 60s, and so civil rights was part of my world, and now we're looking at really again having another look at how civil rights is again in question, and how far did we really come. And so the Black Lives Matter movement and all kinds of things are in the front now. I've painted Black Madonnas, and so there is sometimes I ask. I certainly don't want to offend anybody, but I believe that also all of those images are universal, and so we all relate to them. And so, like I said, I don't know, I come to them lightly, but seriously. And
Right, thank you very much. Well, thank you both for participating. We also want to thank the support of the US Embassy in Lisbon, and the next Tiny Talk will happen soon. Stay tuned to our social media networks to attending the next talk. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting us.
yes, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here.
Thank you.